Ladies and gentlemen, there is a power in silence that many overlook, a power in holding back when the world demands you to speak. But understand this, words are like fire. They can warm a home or burn it to the ground. And in a world where voices shout over one another just to be heard, wisdom is found not in the loudest voice, but in the one that speaks only when the words are greater than the silence. Some of the greatest leaders, the most influential minds, and the most powerful souls knew when to hold their tongues and when to unleash words that could shake mountains. So ask yourself, are your words adding value, or are they just noise? Do your words carry weight, or are they just filling empty space? Because the measure of a person is not just in what they say, but in what they choose not to say. Let's walk this path together. 7 principles, 7 lessons, 7 moments that define the difference between noise and wisdom, the power of silence in a noisy world. We live in a world that never stops talking. From the moment we wake up to the moment we sleep, we are bombarded with voices. On the news, on social media, on the streets, everybody has something to say, everybody wants to be heard. But have you ever noticed that the most powerful individuals don't always speak the most? They don't waste words. They don't fill the air with empty noise. They understand the power of silence in a world that never stops shouting. Silence is not weakness. Silence is not ignorance. Silence is not a lack of an opinion. Silence is strength. It is control. It is knowing that not every thought needs to be spoken. Not every emotion needs a response, and not every argument deserves engagement. Silence is the difference between reacting and responding, between being dragged into chaos and rising above it. There's a reason the wise are often quiet. They observe. They absorb. They listen before they speak. And when they do speak, their words carry weight. Their voices command attention, and their silence before that moment makes their words even more powerful. Because when someone who rarely speaks finally does, people listen. So ask yourself, are you adding to the noise, or are you breaking through it? Are your words meaningful, or are they just filling space? Because in a world addicted to talking, sometimes the greatest thing you can do is not speak. Sometimes silence says more than words ever could. And when you finally do speak, make sure your words deserve the moment. Speaking with purpose, not just to be heard. Too many people speak just to prove they exist. They mistake volume for importance. They think the more they talk, the more relevant they become. But let me tell you something. Real power is in speaking with purpose, not just to be heard. Every word you say has an impact. It either builds someone up or tears them down. It either inspires or destroys. It either brings clarity or confusion. And if you're speaking without thinking, without meaning, without intention, then you're not communicating. You're just making noise, and noise drowns out wisdom. Look at the greats, the leaders, the legends. They didn't speak just because they had a voice. They spoke because they had something to say. And when they spoke, their words moved people. Their words changed minds. Their words reshaped the world, because they understood that speaking is not about being noticed. It's about making a difference. So before you speak, ask yourself, why am I saying this? What impact will this have? Is this making the world better, or is it just adding to the chaos? Because the world doesn't need more noise, it needs more voices that matter. It needs more people who choose their words with care, who understand that silence is not empty, but sometimes the most profound statement of all. Words can build or destroy. Choose wisely. Words are weapons. Words are tools. They can create or they can destroy. They can heal or they can wound. And the way you choose to use them determines the kind of impact you have on the world. Some people throw words around carelessly, never stopping to think about the damage they might cause. They lash out in anger, they spread negativity, they use their voice as a weapon instead of a bridge. And once words are spoken, you can never take them back. A scar from a wound might fade, but a scar from a word can last a lifetime. But on the other hand, words also have the power to build. A single sentence can inspire someone to chase their dreams. A few words of encouragement can lift someone out of darkness. A well-placed phrase can turn doubt into confidence, failure into motivation, and struggle into strength. The choice is yours. Will your words be a force for destruction or a force for growth? Will they tear down or will they lift up? Because every word you speak shapes the world around you. And when you finally understand that, you start to speak less. But when you do, your words matter more. Listening, the art that speaks louder than words. Some people hear, but they don't listen. They wait for their turn to talk. They nod their heads, but their minds are elsewhere. But real listening, true listening, is one of the greatest forms of communication there is. Because when you listen, you learn. The wisest people are not the ones who talk the most, they're the ones who listen the most. They listen to understand, not just to reply. They listen to see the world through someone else's eyes. They listen because they know that sometimes silence speaks louder than words. Most people want to be heard, but few people are willing to listen. And that's why so many conversations go nowhere. That's why misunderstandings happen. That's why conflict escalates. Because everyone wants to talk, but nobody wants to understand. But when you listen, really listen, you connect, you gain insight, you build relationships. And most importantly, you become the kind of person whose words, when finally spoken, carry more power than 1,000 empty voices combined. Mastering the pause, the strength in holding back. In life, there's a moment right before you speak, a pause. A space between thought and action. And that space, that tiny hesitation, is where wisdom lives. Too many people rush past it. They don't think before they speak. They react instead of respond. But those who understand the power of that pause, those who master it, control the conversation, the outcome, and often their own destiny. There's strength in holding back. Strength in knowing when to wait, when to listen, when to let silence do the talking. Because in that moment of stillness, clarity is found. The right words form. The right decisions emerge. And instead of speaking out of impulse, you speak out of intention. Think about the moments in your life when you've said something you regretted. Chances are you spoke too soon. You let emotion take over. You let frustration, anger, or fear push words out of your mouth before wisdom had a chance to catch up. But imagine if you had paused. Imagine if you had taken a breath, let the moment settle, and then spoken from a place of clarity instead of chaos. How many problems could have been avoided? How many relationships could have been saved? The pause is not silence. It's not inaction. It's power in its purest form. It's control. It's the ability to shape the conversation before a single word is spoken. It's the difference between reacting and responding, between fueling a fire and putting it out, between being heard and being understood. Great leaders, powerful speakers, and wise individuals all share this one trait. They know when to pause. They know that sometimes the greatest impact comes not from the words themselves, but from the moment before they are spoken. That pause holds weight. It demands attention. It turns silence into a statement. So don't be afraid of the pause. Don't rush to fill the silence. Let it breathe. Let it settle. Let it build anticipation. Because when you do finally speak, the world will be waiting, and they will listen. Silence is a tool for growth and reflection. People fear silence. They treat it as something to be avoided, as if the absence of noise means the absence of life. But let me tell you something. Some of the greatest transformations, the greatest breakthroughs, the greatest lessons you will ever learn happen in silence. Silence gives you space to think, space to reflect, space to grow. When you step away from the noise, when you take a moment to be still, you start to hear things you never noticed before. Your own thoughts become clearer. Your own emotions become more understandable. And in that quiet space, you gain perspective. Think about the times you've been truly lost, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It wasn't the noise that helped you find your way. It was the stillness, the moments when you sat alone with your thoughts, the moments when you disconnected from the outside world and tuned into yourself. That's where growth happens. That's where wisdom is born. But too many people fill every moment with distractions. They're afraid to be alone with their own thoughts, afraid to sit in silence, afraid of what they might discover. So they drown themselves in noise, music, television, endless conversations, anything to avoid facing themselves. But growth requires stillness. It requires those quiet moments of self-reflection. It requires the courage to listen to your own inner voice. If you want to become wiser, if you want to grow, if you want to truly understand yourself and the world around you, embrace silence. Make time for it. Sit with it, learn from it, because in that stillness you will find answers that no amount of talking could ever provide. When to break the silence, speaking with impact. Silence is powerful, but there are moments when it must be broken, moments when your voice must be heard. And knowing when to speak, when to break the silence, is just as important as knowing when to hold it. Some people stay silent when they should speak. They hesitate. They hold back out of fear, out of doubt, out of uncertainty. But there comes a time when silence is no longer strength. It becomes avoidance. And in those moments, your words matter more than ever. When injustice happens, when truth is needed, when someone is in pain and your voice could lift them up, that is when you must speak. That is when your silence does not serve you or the world. That is when you must step forward and let your words carry the weight they were meant to carry. Speaking with impact means choosing your words with care. It means making sure they serve a purpose. It means understanding that your voice is a tool, and like any tool, it must be used with precision. A single sentence at the right moment can change everything. A word of encouragement can save a life. A truth spoken with conviction can alter the course of history. But if you speak all the time, if you throw words around carelessly, then when the moment comes when you need to be heard, no one will listen. That's why silence is important. That's why restraint is powerful. Because when you do speak, when you do break the silence, your words will hit harder, go further, and mean more. So know when to hold your tongue, but also know when to unleash your voice, because silence is golden until the moment comes when your words must shine brighter. Legacy of words, how your voice defines you. Your words are not just sounds that disappear into the air. They are your legacy. They are the echoes you leave behind in the minds and hearts of others. They shape how people remember you. They determine the impact you have on the world. And if you don't use them wisely, you may leave behind a trail of destruction instead of inspiration. Every great leader, every historical figure, every individual who has ever changed the world did so with words. They understood the power of a single sentence, the weight of a carefully chosen phrase, the impact of a speech delivered at the right moment. But just as words can build legacies, they can also destroy them. A careless statement, a reckless comment, a moment of thoughtless speech can undo years of respect, credibility, and influence. Your voice is a reflection of your character. When people hear you speak, they do not just listen to your words. They see who you are. They see your integrity, your wisdom, your emotions, your intentions, and over time, the way you speak becomes your reputation. If your words are careless, your reputation will be too. But if your words are measured, wise, and purposeful, you will be remembered not just as someone who spoke, but as someone who mattered. Think about it. What do you want people to remember when they hear your name? Do you want them to recall a person who always spoke without thinking, who fueled conflict instead of peace, who reacted instead of responded? Or do you want them to remember a person whose words carried wisdom, who knew when to speak and when to listen, who left the world better than they found it? Your words are your fingerprint on the world. They are a record of who you were, what you believed, and how you made others feel. And while money fades, while status can be lost, while power can shift, the words you leave behind last forever. The books you write, the speeches you give, the lessons you teach. These are the things that will remain long after you are gone. So choose your words as if they will outlive you, because they will. Speak with intention, speak with wisdom, speak only when your words are greater than your silence. Because in the end, your voice is not just for today, it is for generations to come. And the legacy you leave will be defined by the words you choose to speak or the wisdom you chose to keep silent. Ladies and gentlemen, I leave you with this. Every word you speak is a choice to build or to break, to heal or to harm, to inspire or to divide. And in that choice, you define who you are. There is a time for silence and a time for speaking, a time to hold your words and a time to release them. And if you learn to master that balance, if you learn to let wisdom, not impulse, guide your voice, then when you finally do speak, people will listen. So speak not just to be heard, but to be understood. Speak not to add to the noise, but to break through it. Speak only when your words are better than your silence. Because when you do, your voice will echo for a lifetime.